views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, it's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet Television's program where we talk to journalists, filmmakers, movie makers, videographers, anybody really in photographers sometimes too, anybody really involved in the media to kind of get you some insight as to what they're thinking about, what is on their minds when they go about doing their reporting. And this evening we have two great guests. We're going to start off with I just found out she became the deputy editor of City Limits, so we're going to talk about that. And then in the second segment, an award-winning film is coming your way from some great Bronx filmmakers. But let's start with my buddy Jeanmarie Evelly. Nice to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back to the program. Jeanmarie, now we get the applause because you just became the deputy editor of the City Limits.
Yes, yeah, just yesterday, technically.
And also you are the youth program manager. We'll talk a little bit about that. This is really a bad question. So what did you do to get to the point where you went from being a reporter for the Norwood News, we recall, to a point where now you're doing all this great stuff for City Limits?
Well, I was at, obviously, Norwood News. This is where we first met, I think, covering stories in the Bronx. I worked at DNA Info for 5 years after that, right. Doing local news stuff, mostly covering Queens, actually, so the other outer boroughs.
All right.
Sorry.
That's it. You're out of here. Toast.
And after DNA Info closed down, sadly, I was lucky enough to land at City Limits. So I started there a year ago, where I was reporting, mostly covering transit issues and running the youth program, as you mentioned. And then here we are. What
do you love about being a journalist and about doing this? And of course, City Limits really do, they have a little edge, so it's real good. But what do you love about it?
Oh, I mean, a lot of things. I love getting to meet new people and talk to them about, the issues that are impacting them. I love covering New York City because obviously it's the best city in the world, right?
There you go.
So you get to write about that. And I love that in journalism you never are really doing the same thing over and over again. You get new stuff all the time and you never get bored. So that's
and she did not mention she loves being on television every now and then.
That too.
So. Listen, you did this story and I told you before the show, I just thought it was so interesting. The borough of the Bronx is getting 4 new commuter rail stops. We know about that, Elizabeth. I got it, Parkchester, Morris Park, Hunts Point, and Co-op City. Yeah. And then a story came out, she wrote it, from City Limits about a new transit line linking the Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn. I thought it was a very interesting concept, especially on the heels of what we already know. So why don't you tell me a little bit about the background of it, and then we'll get into what it might or might not mean for the borough of the Bronx.
Sure. So this is a proposal, right? So nothing is happening at this point yet, which
no
is important to keep in
yet.
mind. Yes, exactly.
Right.
But this is a group called the Regional Plan Association, so they're an advocacy planning group, and they have been actually working on and kind of advocating for this proposal since like the mid-90s, actually. They said that there's existing rail right-of-way that runs from the Bronx into Brooklyn that could be used to construct a new above-ground rail line that could serve as a new transit link that would run from Co-op City in the Bronx, and this is their proposal, all the way to Bay Ridge in Brooklyn, and it would cross through the South Bronx into Astoria, Queens. And they see this as, if it were to happen, a real boon for obviously the outer borough commuters. Most of our subway system obviously is centered around Manhattan, but there's been a ton of growth in the outer boroughs, as you know. There's been a lot of job growth happening in the outer boroughs. So something that would connect, especially in a north-south way for riders, going between the 3 outer boroughs there, the Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn, would I think be, this is their idea, would be kind of transformative for people.
And now this would not be another subway line. This would be either like a Metro North or Amtrak or
So it's
some other
not,
commuter
yeah,
or LIRR? I mean,
exactly.
I don't
It
know
hasn't actually been established
how to do it.
Exactly. But so the new thing that's happened, so this is an old proposal, but they've been updating it over the years. But a week or two ago, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, Assemblywoman Latrice Walker, who represents Brooklyn, she introduced a bill in the Assembly up in Albany, basically, which, if it gets passed, would require the MTA to do a feasibility study of this proposal to see if, so obviously it would be hypothetically MTA run. In what capacity, I don't think they've really worked that out. But she wants the MTA to study it and see if this could actually happen.
How much infrastructure actually exists for it, and how much would, because you mentioned that it was kind of existing rail lines, but then you also mentioned, well, maybe they could build some stuff. So, you know, how does that work? I mean, once you start talking about that, then you're talking about a lot of money.
Yes, definitely. Well, so there are existing rail right-of-ways, and 3 different agencies actually use the route that the Regional Plan Association has mapped out for what they call, and they call it the tri-borough. That would be what they've called the line proposal. And
I guess maybe they'll eventually change the name to the RFK, but no, that's a joke.
so my understanding,
And that's an in-joke. If you don't know what we're talking about, of course, the Tri-Borough Bridge was changed to RFK Bridge. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we still call it the tri-borough. So there are 3 agencies that do use some of these portions of these lines. I think Amtrak uses a portion, the Long Island Railroad does, and then CSX, which is like a freight company. So if it did get turned into some type of commuter or transit line, it would probably be used in conjunction with some freight activity, which I think is not the usual, but not unheard of. Is my understanding.
And frankly, you know, in taking a look at transportation as a whole, certainly in the southern Bronx and the eastern Bronx, that wouldn't be the worst thing. I will just interject. I don't think it was in your article. The CSX lines in the southern part of the Bronx have been mired in controversy because of their lack of use and all that kind of stuff. And there's very sensitive areas about down there, whether they're building, you know, the new Ridgefield properties and I guess it's kind of the most southern part of the West Bronx, and then taking that all going east under the Tri-Borough Bridge. So I'm not saying no, that'll be among the many issues to be dealt with. How has it been received? Seems like it would have been received pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I think people who live in the outer boroughs would obviously like to see something like this, most of them anyway, because it is not easy, as you know, I'm sure, to get if you're not driving. You know, for a while I commuted from Astoria, Queens to Norwood to work at the Norwood News, and that is not an easy commute. It would take me like an hour and 15 minutes.
And so this would cut that?
Hypothetically, well, Norwood's not really near where the line
I
would
understand
run,
that,
but
if you want to
hypothetically,
go
I
to
could have
Cobb
taken
City.
it exactly, and then take a bus or something, right?
Right. Well, and especially with the new stops coming online, which is a pun, with the new stops, potentially you could really open things up.
Yeah, I mean, I think planners and folks in the transit world are just really looking for any opportunity to boost the outer borough connections because, like we said, everything's Manhattan. It's not easy for people to get from Brooklyn to Queens or Bronx to Queens.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, and we had this conversation just before the show, and I want to pursue it a little bit. Traffic is a mess, and everybody, including people like me who do use a car, want to get people out of their cars and into mass transit. But of course, the subways are a mess, and the subways are stuffed. The buses, we know that they've been redesigned by the MTA, so we're getting a new plan. And maybe this would be another way to get people out of their cars. So if you, for example, were at Cobb City going to Brooklyn or whatever, or Queens, or looking to go east that way, maybe that would give you an alternative.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the kind of prevailing sentiment is, like you said, the most efficient way to move people and the most eco-friendly way to move people outside of like a bicycle or whatever is to get them into mass transit as opposed to individual cars.
Which, of course, leads directly into this idea of the road dieting, which has been controversial in many places. I know we've done it on Broadway. There is a very controversial proposal in Morris Park. What are your thoughts? I mean, the city is just looking at any way they can do it, and they're saying, okay, we're going to redo this. The Riverdale Press had a story about Marshallou Avenue. I wasn't even aware there were enough cars there to require a road remodeling. So just what are your thoughts about the city doing it? Do you think this is just like a runaway, for want of a better pun, freight train? Or, you know, what exactly is going on here? Because the city, it's part of Vision Zero. I don't even know what to make of it.
Well, in the same way that congestion pricing is trying to cut down on the number of cars on the street and try and get people into mass transit, there's also, from a transit advocacy perspective, folks who would really like to see the streets be more pedestrian-friendly and cyclist-friendly. I think there's a feeling that for decades our streets have been predominantly given away to cars, or dominated by cars, and there is a sentiment that that more of these streets should be sort of mixed use and have space for bike lanes and.
Here's a question that you don't have to answer, and you probably can answer. To me, it would seem you would want to assess in an area, like, for example, they're talking about Southern Boulevard near the Botanical Garden. Yeah. People do bike in that area. If you told me you're creating bike lanes, I would say, well, that might work out, even if it squeezes traffic a little bit. But when you were talking about Morris Park, people there are saying, we don't even have any bikers. I would rather... is it if we build it, they will come, or let's build it when we know we have use for it so that it gets used? I mean, I try to look for spaces in places that have bike lanes and there's no bicyclists, and I can't find a space.
I think that there is also a feeling that a lot of people who would maybe bike, like I have a bike, for example, right? But I get nervous riding on the streets because, I mean, we've had several fatalities recently.
I also ride a bike, and my sarcastic remark is, gee, I can't imagine why.
Yeah, it's scary. So the idea is if we put safe infrastructure in for cyclists, it would obviously encourage more people to take cycling up.
Last thing I just want to mention before you go, you're also the youth program manager, and City Limits has a wonderful program for young people, young journalists. Real briefly, tell me about that. If there's still openings, if people want to sign up, or where are we at?
Sure. So the program is called Clarify, which stands for the City Limits Accountability Reporting Initiative for Youth, which is a mouthful.
Get that down.
I know. Yeah. But it's called Clarify, and it is our youth program for mostly high school students. In New York City, we do take some college-age kids as well, and it basically teaches them the tenets of reporting, journalism. They get chances to work on stories that we then publish on the site.
So maybe even they get a little byline or a co-byline.
The goal is to get them a byline of some sort.
So the pitch is for any high school student who may be interested in journalism, and really, and certainly summertime is a great time to get your feet
So
wet.
we are booked up for the summer. Unfortunately, we've already squared that away, but we will be taking applications for the fall, probably towards the end of August. So go to our website and check it out.
Must be among, aside from your fulfilling work as a journalist, must be a real joy for you to do that stuff.
It's a ton of fun, yeah. It's great.
Well, there she is, ladies and gentlemen, Jeanmarie Evelly, who is, I just want to get it right, the new deputy editor and the youth program manager at City Limits. Thank you so much. Say hello to Jared and all my buddies down there. And we're going to take a break, aren't we? Yes, we're going to take a break. And we'll be right back, and we'll talk about a film. Wait till you see the trailer on this film. You're going to be quaking in your boots. You too. You too. Be right back.
Sure, I look cute now, but when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self, and I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family? This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry. Go along, son.
It's always worth it.
Whoa! Master!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Hey, it's Ava, and this is Tess from Vivo's Do It Yourselfie, where we recreate the hottest looks from today's biggest music videos.
After cleaning out our closet, we have a lot of clothes we don't wear anymore.
Like this old t-shirt.
It's not garbage, it's actually a brand new rug.
And to make it, all you need to do is cut, tie, and glue.
Cut the t-shirt into strips.
Tie the strips into knots.
And glue the knots to the bath mat. I love it. Give your garbage another life.
And recycle.
Hey, back with you in the Bronx Buzz. This is going to be fun, so strap yourself in. I don't know how many, a month ago, 2 months ago, we had some guy named Greg Hernandez, and they ran a Bronx 48-hour film challenge. And we talked about it, and our producer, Stephen Powell, and I had talked about, gee, when they get the winners, let's bring them in. Well, guess what? We got the winners. Let's see, the film is NightHawk, and won Best Film, Best Director, Best Editing, Best Cinematography. What could be better? Hello to my buddy Justin Rodriguez. It's been a long time. I haven't seen you. We haven't put you on TV in a while. And Everett Hamlet, nice to have you. Two young men, and I know this is something BronxNet is very proud of. You guys really got your chops through BronxNet television, right? Justin, let's start with that before we get to the film. What have you learned? Where have you been? How'd you get to this point?
Yeah, well, I mean, I started at Bronx, like you said. I started around like 15. I was part of Teens Talk to Glennis.
Wow. Oh my.
Yeah.
15 years ago?
Yeah. I was like, ugh.
I remember all that stuff, and I certainly remember Glennis.
Yeah,
wow.
It was a great show. I mean, I started as a host, but like I was always drawn more to behind the scenes kind of things. So I lucked out. I had a few good mentors here that allowed me to use camera, come get into the directing room, start editing, things like that. And since then, I've just taken those skills to different studios, networks, stuff like that. So I've done a couple of things with Viacom, with NBC, with NBC Sports, and now I'm sort of working in the film world through a short film and a series pilot that I'm doing at the end of this month, working as an AD, and then also working as a AE on a full-length documentary in Harlem.
You love it.
Oh, yeah.
You love it.
Yeah, I could do this.
And I have to tell you, I mean, I know Justin for all those years. I didn't realize when I saw the name Justin Rodriguez, which is somewhat of a common name, I didn't realize it was him who was coming in. I remember you working on Bronx Talk and other productions, that if I wanted to get a real answer, other people who were kind of lower level, I would always say, well, let me get to Justin and he'll tell me what's really going on.
Yeah.
So I mean that in the best possible way, and congratulations on what you've done. Everett, let's talk with you. You have some BronxNet roots as well.
Yeah, after I graduated from SUNY Albany, I started working at BronxNet Television in 2016 up until 2018, and I left to finish my documentary on the New York City Parks Department. And through that, I was able to work with New Yorkers for Parks, New York Restoration Project. I worked with the David Rockefeller Fund. I've worked with a bunch of local mom and pop shops doing commercials, doing profile pieces, but my roots were set here.
There you go. And so I guess on our own network, we're doing a shout out to BronxNet Television. And Michael Thrower, who's running around here, he can't stop. He's taking pictures of all of us. So he's out here and he's part of the production team.
Yeah.
All right, so Everett, why don't you start? Tell me about NightHawk.
NightHawk.
And how it fit into this 48-hour film challenge.
We heard about the 48-hour film challenge a few months ago, and we just finished filming a remake of A Bronx Tale, Robert De Niro's A Bronx Tale. Myself, Justin, and Michael, we did The Bronx Tale. And then we heard about the 48-hour film challenge. We were like, this is the first ever. We wanted, it wasn't just a we should do it. We wanted to win the whole thing.
Well,
like, that was
let's
our
see,
mindset.
Best film, best director, best editing, best cinematography. You did pretty well. Now, so the idea was to make a film in 48 hours?
Yeah, so it was at Friday from about 5:30 to 7. We sat there. They explained all the rules, everything. As of Friday, 7 p.m., we had until Sunday, 7 p.m. to write, film, and edit a short film.
And NightHawk is what you did?
Yep.
I got to tell you something. Now, I only saw the trailer, and you're going to see it in a minute, because it's about a minute long. That's pretty powerful stuff. Now, did you have the concept beforehand?
No.
No. You literally... what was the concept? What was the idea? It's an extraordinary idea. Get young producers to go out, make a film, be back by noon,
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of the challenge is that you don't find out your genre until that night.
Oh.
So you have no idea what you're even writing.
Oh, I wasn't even aware of it. Because
Yeah.
I was thinking, gee, you could have some stuff in your mind.
No, as a filmmaker, you have ideas in your mind running constantly, but it really challenges you because, like, you could be someone who can knock out thrillers quickly or somebody who can shoot and write dramas, but like you might get something like a comedy or something like a silent or something like that.
And there's not a lot of time to reshoot or anything like that.
Not at all.
It's a tremendous exercise, creative exercise.
Very much.
I mean, and it forces you to do it and do it right the first time.
Yeah.
You also have to have talented people around you, people
Yeah.
who can run the cameras, get the audio right, because we're
Yeah.
not reshooting this thing. You know, you got
Right.
So what was your challenge? What was your theme? What was your assignment? And then what did you turn out?
So we picked up action and adventure.
They gave that to you.
Yeah, we basically how it works is each team would go up and pick their genre out of a hat, and it was
Wow.
surprised. The minute it hit 7 o'clock,
Okay,
it was
make
like
an action
go.
and adventure film in 48 hours. What a great
Right.
time. I love it.
Right.
Tremendous.
So
Don't forget the location.
yes, so it was basically you get a genre, you get a location, you get a prop that you have to use,
Where
and
was
you
your
get a
location?
line. Bainbridge.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we also have to include a line that they give you. And it
Which
sort
was?
of-
These pretzels are making me thirsty? No.
So the line was, they make that in the Bronx?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was it's really interesting having to sit there and create it. And during the meeting, Everett had turned to me and said, "I want to shoot tonight because I feel like
You got to get going.
we got to start it." And at that point, him and Michael had already asked me to write it. So of course I'm just like, "Oh, great!
Yeah,
this
let's
will be
get going.
amazing!" Yeah.
Wow.
So it was basically
How exciting. I'm excited. I'm like excited. What a thrill.
Yeah, it was basically one of those things where as soon as it hit 7 o'clock, we didn't leave the actual meeting room until about maybe 8:30.
Yeah.
Because at that point, we had already taken out my laptop. We started writing, coming up with character lists. Everett was calling actors.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
you gotta bring in some people.
Yeah, we actually shot the entire thing that evening. We wrote it from about 8:30 to about 9:30, and then we separated. Mike and Everett went to go set up the location. I went to go pick up props, and by 11 p.m. that night, we had actors, a set, and we're lighting for the first scene.
And I think one of the things, just basically hearing from both of you, one of the things that contributes to your ability to be able to do that is the experience you had. You knew people. You worked BronxNet. I don't know if any of the BronxNet people were involved other than Michael. So it gave you a lead. If you were just starting fresh, I don't know if you could make it happen.
Well, we've all done it for a good amount of years at this point. It was also a really good mentality of, which is just something I think the three of us also have, is that also really believe in, is all of us have this particular strength. And it was one of those things where it was like, if we focus on that strength,
you do your thing.
You do your thing, you do your thing, and then kind of like, we'll see what we can create.
Everett, what was the concept? In other words, what was the story you were telling? Because in the minute, you get a sense of it, but you don't fully get it.
So the story we wanted to tell was the end of an era. So we were passing the mantle from one superhero to another. It was kind of a retirement party, so to speak, for a superhero and its sidekick. But the superhero was saying, look, this is my time, now it's your time.
And you feel good about it? And by the way, how long a feature is it? 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes?
I believe it ran to about like 5:55.
And they insisted on 5 minutes kind of thing?
Well, you had, it had to be anywhere from, I think, 4 to 7, right? 4 to 7 minutes in length.
Yeah.
Are you happy with it?
Yeah, actually, while we were
I'm going to
filming
make an inference after you speak. Answer the question, and then I'll jump in.
I am happy with it because while we were filming with it, the way we wrote it, I can honestly say it's not the way we filmed it. We built upon the storyline as it was happening. And to make that short film in 48 hours, it's definitely an idea. If we all have the time, I would love to go back to and expand upon.
That is what I was going to say. It's like it forces you to just create, and if you get a job at at some sort of production company, there's always deadlines, and they say, you know what, this scene is no good, and we got to rewrite it. We got to rewrite it today because we got to shoot today, etc. Now you'll feel like you can produce under that pressure, right?
Yeah.
Pretty good. All right, are we ready? We've set it up enough. Are we ready for the trailer? Does somebody want to say anything about it beforehand, or let it tell its own story?
I mean,
So this is a minute of the 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you guys edited it together. I can't wait to ask you the question I have after this. All right, so this is NightHawk, one word, capital H in the middle, which is like Bronx Talk with, right? And here it is. Now, and the name of the team is BronxJem, JEM.
Yep. Justin, Everett, Michael.
How easy? How did I not know? All right, NightHawk, take a look.
Looks like like the legacy of the NightHawk ends with you.
Civilians out of here. But now!
Are you nervous? So here's my question. That, focus shot with the gun, and then the gun goes off. I got to tell you, I think that's a brilliant shot. I think that is an absolutely brilliant shot. And who's going to tell me how you did it? He's asking me to tell you secrets.
So that scene itself, after we
I
did
hate to ask, was it a real gun?
No, it was a
No,
it was a
plastic gun?
No, it was actually a paintball gun.
paintball. Yes.
Paintball
It was
gun.
a paintball gun that we took apart the canister from the back.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah.
Finish.
So after we did the dialogue scene, we were like, what's the transition? What's the transition? We have to reveal the villain. So we were like, not only is it going to be a camera pan, but we have to also bring the gun into it.
Yeah.
Right.
So then as we were just talking about it and doing that in front of the camera, we we're like, oh, that's such a cool shot. So we just put the gun in front of the camera and we kept
All
playing
right,
with the
so
flash.
here's the next question then. So I know that you edit in the sound. We know that that's how it's done and all that, and if it's timed right and you know what you're doing. How did you get the visual so it looks like the gun exploded?
I mean, that's just the power of editing. No, I can't give you away all the secrets,
I
Gary.
wanted a real secret. So it just was edited.
Yeah.
Right? And three of you did the editing. One person's
Michael Thor. I
Michael's
can't take credit.
Yeah.
Michael Thor edited.
Well, you can take the
short
credit. He's
film.
out here. You guys are on TV. Listen, what's next for it? Or that's done and you move on? Or what's next? Real quick, because we got to get out of here.
Honestly, a year ago, I made a declaration. I said, I want to be the best Bronx filmer, period.
Well, so
And
far, I got a list here. Best film, best director.
what's next? More short films, my documentary. I'm hoping a full feature that's based in the Bronx.
What about you?
Just more creating. Just coming up with more films and more original content.
And the invitation is an open invitation. Anytime you have something, this is where you got to bring it aboard to show it.
Thank you.
Great.
We appreciate it.
Everett Hamlet, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Justin Rodriguez, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Congratulations. Best film, best director, best editing, best cinematography, and you saw 1 minute of why. And that one shot, literal, figurative, all right, they tell me I got to go. It was tremendous. Thank you so much. All right, guess what? We'll see you next week on Bronx Talk. This week, we're going to talk about police suicides, which will be a really important subject. So we'll see you then. Good night.